is Around the Circle. I'm Jeff Cook. It's my 50th birthday, and this is the conversation I wanted to have most. We are with the Augie Cook.
I'm glad I'm the best of the three of the rest of us.
I mean, it's all comparative. There are a lot of people who have studied neurodivergence, and there's a lot of people who have studied the teenage experience of those going through COVID, but there aren't a lot of people who have done as much thinking as you have from the inside on some of those issues.
Yep, unfortunately.
There's a lot of people who have studied shifts in thinking about sex and gender and how they've affected those under the age of 21. But there aren't a lot of folks who have done as much thinking as you have about being non-binary and all that means.
I think there are, actually, but I appreciate the honor.
There's also a lot of people like myself who have done quite a bit of thinking about Enneagram Eights, but there are not a lot of eights out there regularly speaking as well as you do about your inner life.
Because they're all cowards who are afraid to show their emotions or something. I don't know.
All the eights, all cowards.
Great to insult all the eights on my first appearance ever.
Well, that's where we're going. We're going to go with these places today, and we're going to start with the Enneagram. Yep. You got introduced to the Enneagram early. Do you remember your Enneagram story, like how you got into Enneagram first?
It was mostly through you and Mom, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember exactly what it was for. It's always been a good tool. I remember I got type first, and then you thought Becca and I, my brother, were both 8s with a 7 wing until he eventually found his own type as a 5. But I've pretty much always stuck with 8. And even if I'm not like a typical 8, I'm very obviously an 8, if that makes sense.
I think 8 made a ton of sense for all of us from the beginning. I thought that Beckett might be a 4 when we went into it. And I remember asking a bunch of questions along those lines, but it was Beckett that really gravitated to the 5.
It was, from what I remember. He said that like the other types just didn't feel right to him, and that I think it really is a personal experience, and being able to type yourself is probably the best thing you can do. Typing others is obviously still a thing you can do, but it's best to just type yourself.
But we got into 8 stuff, and it was immediate. This would have been, okay, so I got into Enneagram in 2016. So let's just say it was 2016, 2017, somewhere in there that we talked to you. So you would have been
like 12 or 13?
Come on. I could do the math. I just wanted you to say it.
No. 2016 would be when I was 11.
Dang it. 11 or 12, somewhere in there. That would have been the time. It would have been when we all got into it, and it became really helpful, I recall. I have all kinds of stories that I've said, but do you have any stories that come to mind in terms of this is where Enneagram's been helpful in our family?
I think being able to say, like, this is what we want and how we work, especially as an autistic person myself, is just very useful. It's really easy to assume that your motives are universal and that everyone else has them. So to realize that, like, you want different things than other people, and you like express things in different ways to different people, especially like stress and security as the main thing I think Enneagram is useful for. But stress and security moves, being able to explain that and to see it in others is just very useful language for the 4 of us.
Yeah. Where do you see the big, like, knowing your motive, which you know internally, but when you hear Mom's motive or Beckett's motive or my motive, can you think of a place where that's mattered to you?
I think mostly in terms of like how I respect you as a person. And like that's just something I have in the back of my mind. Not only to like best accommodate you, I don't mean that in a negative way, but also to explain actions that I personally wouldn't make.
That's what, so from a, you are my child to parent, being able to, this is what my parents' motive is in this moment. It feels like they're trying to control me, but they just have a motive for X. That's something I've seen in this before, because Kelly, my beautiful bride, is a 3, and she occasionally pushes for forward movement for you, yeah?
Yeah, I do think the 3-8 parent-child dynamic is very interesting. The 3 wants success in whatever way that is, whether social or like more tangible, like grades. and the 8 doesn't want to be controlled. And so what the 3 sees as motivation, the 8 can see as control. And that makes the dynamic tricky if you can't talk through it. Thankfully, we've been pretty good at that, and we've both learned how to communicate with each other on terms like that, which has mostly just been like me saying that I need my own space to fail in my own way, I guess.
A lot of vocabulary for priorities. Where do you see the most understanding of your sibling?
Beckett, I'm gonna be honest. I was not a good kid, but I don't think a lot of kids were like very good. I was just really mean to him. But Beckett's been in an episode of this in the past, right? He talked about
Uh-huh.
his
Yeah.
appendix thing there.
But Beckett and Kelly both got a chance to talk to Katie Whitlock. And so you were the last of the cooks to appear.
Great, saving the best for last, it seems. And just having that arrow is very useful for me since that's something I tend to cover. Since resources are a concept I tend to prioritize myself during stress, and so to understand that, like, oh, he's like that all the time, not necessarily just in stress, is very useful to me, and it allows me to engage with him or to disengage and not use his resources. Becca had his appendix removed when he was very young, and so just like the doctors didn't do anything about it, and so he's just like, we had this emergency surgery really late, and so just knowing that as an experience that he has helps me respect him in a way, in the sense of like I make sure, like I'm older than him. He is honestly probably more prepared for the outside world, as it were, than I am, but I'm more older than him, and there's always going to be that protective energy from the older sibling. And so I make sure to do things like look out and make sure he's informed because he's a 5.
Yeah.
Particularly making sure he's informed so he can make his own decisions. I respect his agency just as he respects mine.
I hear something has developed there in terms when you say you have a protective energy. How do you feel that?
I want him to I don't want to say I want him to fail, but like I want him to try again, if that makes sense. I want him to be able to learn in safe ways when I see him. And it he's probably better at doing that than I am. It feels weird to like guard him in that way, but it's still just something that's on the back of my mind all the
Yeah.
time.
Still a priority.
Yeah.
That's good. Where else do you see your eightness coming through most in your life?
I recently, after COVID, I have had a lot of troubles going back to school, primarily because I have a sensory processing disorder. That means light and sound are just more extreme to me, and I am stressed when I experience those in excess. Like, for example, a rave would be very overwhelming to me. And school has been a consistent source of stress for me in just triggering that and trying to figure out that I want to do this, but I also don't want to have the environment around me be the thing controlling me. That's the thing that is just like the most a experience to me personally.
Yeah. It's not people on that front.
No, it's people make the decisions, but it's mostly the environment. And people are generally helpful if you tell them what to do. I don't mean to be that blunt, but like if you tell someone that you need help with something, odds are they can respect that. If you have broken leg, you are not going to be asked to go play laser tag, for example.
Right.
That's just not. Unless your friend's a dick. That break up with them, I guess.
That could happen, right? Did you want to play laser tag? Oh, sorry, you got a broken leg. The thing that I didn't really see this much in the Enneagram literature when I got into was how spatial eights, nines, and ones are, because I feel that as well. Like I'm just very aware of my environment. The overlap of neurodivergence and sensory processing issues, that's severe because that's kind of like doubling down, yeah?
Yeah. Though autism and sensory processing disorder are correlated in that if you have one, you are more likely to have the other. It just means, from what I understand about autism, it is generally higher brain activity, which also means way more feelings, and those feelings can be more extreme.
Mm.
High highs, low lows.
Sticking on your eightness, what are some of the things that folks get wrong about eights when talking about eights? There seems to be a lot of misconceptions, and I think eights, fives, and twos are the hardest to understand.
Yeah. The primary misconception I would say with eights is that the motivation is not to control others, it is to not be controlled themselves.
Mhm.
That obviously can come about in trying to control others, especially if an eight is more unhealthy. But if you see, for example, your boss at work being controlling because they're an eight, that's either because they don't want to be controlled themselves and something dog world zero sum game, or that's how the position is, I guess, or that's how they see the position.
Here's an image I think a lot of us have of they would say this is like the prototypical eight that they're gonna get stick their chest out and get all animated, throw punches first. That has not been my experience of eights.
Absolutely. I think that is a stereotype more associated with counterphobic sixes,
Mhm.
the sexual countertype. And I think that eights are very much more likely to be like bears, if that makes sense. If you do not fuck with a bear, the bear will not fuck with you.
Mhm.
And I think there are a lot of sixes who want to be eights. I think there is a lot of like, I think due to this stereotype, especially with social aids, that they are controlling, that sixes see that, counterphobic sixes see that and want to be like, oh, if I'm this type, I won't be hurt. But eights don't want to be hurt in a separate way that sixes don't want to be hurt. They're similar, but they're distinct. I would say an eight more just doesn't want to be controlled, and they're fine experiencing more minor pains, whereas a six is far more easily wanting to be controlled as long as they're protected from harm.
Yeah. What is there anything else that pops for you in terms of misconceptions about eights?
I think that the main misconception is that social eights are the countertype. I think the emotional presence of social eights makes people forget that they're the countertype. And so sexual and self-preservative eights, like myself, I'm self-preservative. I think those two are less seen as stereotypical eights. They're not what you would think of when it comes to eights because they're not the most present. They
Yeah.
tend to just guard their own spaces like a nine, but like with more self-protective energy. My last thought is I think a lot of people underestimate motive in the Enneagram because
Mhm.
that's really all Enneagram is. It's a set of nine motives in my eyes. How you respond to each of the nine motives determines what type you are, but they can sprout out in vastly different ways.
Mhm. How do you see that playing out in terms of your experience of being an eight?
My personal experience of not wanting to be controlled or not wanting to be vulnerable has very much experienced itself with light and sound, and that's not something a more thrill-seeking eight would have to experience, like someone
Yeah.
with a stronger seven wing. That's just something they might even embrace because that's not something that controls them. That could even be liberating depending on what their own background is.
Mm.
And something that I personally enjoy, like deep conversations, video games, something where I might be like more controlled than someone else or more out of control would be more appealing to me because I have more understanding of what's going on, and another eight might not be as a fan of doing those things.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's interesting about your eightness as it overlaps with sensory processing is I don't see you having any enemies or getting like I seldom see you pushing against people, but I think it feels like a lot of that energy of not wanting to be controlled is aimed at certain atmospheres.
It
Which
is, and it's also the case that I don't want to have bad relationships with people because if someone wants to like mess me up, who knows what they'll do. It's better to just keep people on your good side and
mm,
not like make enemies for no reason. I know the eights can and do use fighting as a way to like show dominance and tell other people not to mess with them, but that's not something either physical or verbal, but that's not something I care to do.
no, that's something I think for real aids, especially self-pres aids, but like really pushing into I don't want to waste my energy on knuckleheads.
that's why self-pres eights especially are seen as more five-ish, because if they expend because the self-pres eight, if they expend resources, they might be vulnerable because they don't have those resources. And that's the self-pres eight's biggest fear. So things like fighting are something a self-pres eight is a lot less likely to do, s- simply because it's not efficient in terms of resources and could have consequences down the road.
Mhm.
Just not worth it.
Of all things, one of our good friends, Adam, who's an 8, trained as an MMA fighter, worked as a bar bouncer, is one of the first sort of people who won't throw punches or kicks in those situations. He, like, trained in order to be able to protect himself and others, and yet seems to me like when he because he's informed, he's like the last person you who would throw a punch. He, like, deals with problems very verbally, calmly, and in that kind of way that I'm maximizing my energy, moving things along. Do you relate to that?
Absolutely. I also think part of it is that his build is kind of an intimidation factor. Like he
By
looks like,
design.
yeah, like he looks like the kind of person you would not want to mess with.
Yep.
And so just having that train, it's not something you need to use, but it's always in your back pocket, and whoever you are talking with is aware of that, and they're less likely to mess with you. Even if even if you don't fire it, a load gun is still useful.
If
Even
it's
the less
at
extreme,
your
but
side.
like point stands.
Yeah. The, loaded gun being the equivalent of a 270-pound Samoan in this particular instance.
Yeah. I think that is why a lot of less healthy eights do tend to fight, because they're fine expending physical resources because they simply haven't put time into emotional resources,
Mm,
especially because the eights are feeling blind. And that's something I think a lot of eights need to prioritize learning more.
yeah. Alright, I wanna talk about stress and security. Let's talk about security. One of my favorite elements of aides is when they are secure, they get big-hearted, they get very compassionate, they're very, present-oriented and seem to really look out for everyone, specifically the weak, to raise them up. These are things that I always see as real praiseworthy attributes. Can you talk about your experience of security?
Sure. I do see eight moving to two as a very mama bear energy, where they are just they're very happy with other people. They can be kind of clingy, but they are very much just in that protective space. I am taken care of, so now I can protect others.
Mm,
Or I am not vulnerable, so now I will help others not be vulnerable. You put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
that's a perfect way to say that. Uh, that's been my take is that, like, when the vulnerability is absent, it frees aides to be strong on behalf of others. Rock music. Talk about restoration at 5.
I five is I think restoration is the best way to say it. It's like I am hurt or in the process of being able to be hurt because I don't have enough resources to protect myself. This is especially the case as a self-preservative eight. It's something I'm more aware of. But when I'm in five space is very much I'm going to retreat, I'm going to look for ways to get back into the fight. Or I'm going to look for ways to recover and heal up so that I make it out alive. It doesn't have to be obviously I'm saying that as more of like a physical thing, but that can be emotional as well. For example, leaving a rough fight or going on Facebook to see what the person you were fighting with is up to.
That's fair. What are some of the resources that are most important to you in 5 space?
I I would say my physical space, like what is around me and what place I'm able to be in, the people around me and what they're able to help me with. That's another reason I don't fuck with others, because if I'm friendly with people, they'll be nice back. And sometimes it's money, sometimes it can be things like medicine or a toy or game to help me chill out and reset. When I look for resources, it's mostly those kind of things that get me out of stress.
Mhm. If you were to ask me what is Augie's most important resource, I would say Aug's computer.
I would agree.
There's do you have you done any reading, or are you of the overlap of neurodivergence and computers? It seems to be common that those who are neurodivergent really gravitate to online world.
I absolutely do. Being able to do stuff, being able to talk to people without having to worry about things like eye contact, which are way less intuitive to autistic people.
Mm.
I think that's a primary thing, but it's also you don't speak immediately. You can plan out your sentences slowly. You don't have to just like keep talking like I am right now, or like you are in person.
Mhm.
It's just it's just a lot less immediate pressure.
So well said. Going into online world, I associate in part with the 5 move because it feels like withdrawal. Do you experience it that way?
I do, yes. When being online doesn't, even if I am doing something with other people, it feels very much less like I'm engaging with other people, even if I am, specifically because no one else is in my space, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I am not like, I don't have someone's body or hand next to me that I have to worry about. I'm just able to focus on my own surroundings.
Your
And I
phys
don't have to keep up with any social expectations as well.
There you go. I mean, that seems like you're setting aside my heart emotions don't need to be here, and my physical body doesn't need to be here. It feels like it's almost entirely mental at that space, yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah. It is very much a place where you engage and restore the mind. It can be physical. There are games that you can play during rest, but it is mostly mental.
Well, we've talked quite a bit about getting balanced, that you can certainly tap into your 5 tools to restore, but getting into your body matters.
Absolutely. I think that being stuck in five space means not abandoning your safety net. I think like laying in there as a hammock. You do not want to make your safety net your hammock. That's just not a good place to be. And when Nate is depressed, when people are depressed, they don't leave their rooms. But for an eight, the bedroom is safe. It is not a place where they are expected, where anyone else is expected to hurt them. They all of their stuff is there, and they do not have to leave until they're ready to leave. So it can be very seductive in that kind of way.
Real similar overlap there, it seems to me, between 8s and 9s who likewise withdraw into spaces.
I do agree with that. The eight obviously is a lot more outgoing than nine, whereas the nine can just let things happen around them. The nine's less concerned with themselves being control as in control as long as they're safe and as long as everyone else is. I think that is the main distinction.
Mm,
I think there's some kind of people pleasing that nine would do that I just wouldn't, or letting
true.
someone do something bad that I would not let them do.
Worth naming motives there in
Yeah.
terms of avoiding vulnerability, but for the 9, avoiding the loss of connection.
Yes. Um, a nine is way more likely to be a bystander because an eight is a lot less afraid of losing a relationship. It does still suck, but to an eight, some sacrifices are necessary to be made.
I also felt like you were saying that connection for yourself with others actually does have a protective element to it.
It does, in the sense that everyone looks out for each other. I need other people to look out for me because I can have times where I can't talk and need other people to assist me with getting out of a situation or out of a room.
Mm.
And that's obviously not something everyone else has to relate to, but that's something I personally have to deal with. And I assume that, and when I interact with others, I assume that there is some other vulnerability of theirs that they might not have to deal with, they might not want to deal with, that I can look out for them in. For example, someone who is someone who is on the lookout for like someone scary, or someone who just doesn't have a good time with directions or something like that. Or someone who needs help understanding something in a board game, for example. That's that's a bit of a tangent. I used to teach board games a lot, so that's just a space I'm very experienced with.
You and I think, experience perhaps alongside 3, 6s, and 9s, 8s and 1s experience their heart in a really distinct spot, their mind in a really distinct spot, and their body in a really distinct spot, and we can kind of identify it along those lines of security and stress is what I'm hearing there.
Absolutely. For me personally, I see my body, mind, and heart as three separate things,
But you can
and
feel that, yeah.
I do. I understand they interact, but I don't like that they interact. If that makes sense, I don't like the fact that if I haven't taken a shower, my mind is tired, or if I feel bad about someone, I might have less energy because part of my mental energy is focused on them, or emotional energy.
What's interesting for the two of us, when I get into headspace, I'm going into more of a secure spot where that's your stress move, restorative space.
Yeah, I like to think of it as recovery.
When you get into your heart and are real giving, aware of others who can use a hand up, get into your teaching mode. You're a really great teacher, and that always exudes. In my mind, you have moved into that more two space. As you were saying, you love teaching people board games, and that's a very helper oriented element. Yeah.
And I honestly think that that move to two makes eights a lot more personable than you would expect. It is very easy for an eight when moving to two to just understand people way better and to understand that they think and want different things to you, and you are going to have to like explain things in a different way, for example.
Yeah. It's a good image of like your when you're in heart space, that heart bonding space, your energy is going outward. When I enter that space, I go into four space, and it's very inward focused.
Yep. And I can tell that. I can see the four emotional versus seven. Let's do things. Who cares about the consequences? Kind of energy.
Mm.
It's not exactly that but
You should tell a story. I don't tell good stories about myself in these spaces. Where do you see me with seven energy?
okay. I remember like one of the birthday presents for, I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, was me taking you out to Fort Collins.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, okay, where are we eating? And you're just like, I don't know.
Mm.
That's what I think of when I think of your move to seven. We're gonna have a great time. The particulars don't matter. And I ended up finding a pizza place that was actually really good, and now is the reason I put oregano on pizza.
Discovery.
Yeah.
It's getting into your body can be a good thing.
Yeah.
Where do you see me in four space?
I see it as I see four space for you as very self-critical. Like what is wrong with me? What am I like? It isn't what am I doing wrong, it's where am I faulty? And I think that's a bit of a weird distinction, but an important one.
That works. Okay. Real personal question for 2 seconds.
Yep.
So autism is a spectrum, correct?
It's That's one way to phrase it, but I think of it as like a salad bar. You've some you have some traits that are associated with autism, and a lot of different autistic people have different traits. Like a lot of autistic people struggle with social interaction, which I am way better at. But I have a lot of sensory issues with which some autistic people don't experience at all.
Mm. That's a great description. In terms of the salad bar side of things, do you feel like you have a full salad, a medium salad, a small salad? Like, how would you describe?
It I'm not sure. I guess I would describe it as a medium salad. It feels weird to describe it in terms of size though, because a lot of the things
Like
that are
content?
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the things that are correlated with autism are really just like, when is this relevant?
Yeah.
And so something that comes up a lot might feel like it's bigger than it actually is, when it's all just part of the same thing.
Mm. Well, I was trying to put a metric on it because I wanted to do a follow-up that was how much salad is in your dad's bowl? Does I am a professional philosopher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little going on, yeah.
I am positive you do. I think you have just learned to mask it better, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I say masking in terms of like presenting neurotypical. And when I see you get devoted to really niche topics, for example, the Enneagram, which we are talking about right now, that's where I see you really liven up. And you have a lot less issue with sensory spaces that I do, but things like emotions can very much hit you hard. In like personal emotions in a way that I have a kind of protective energy over, so that that might be because I'm innate, but I have a lot of a more protective energy and an eye for others, so I focus on that less myself.
Mm, that's well said. Is that associated
I
with
do think
being neurotypical? Having emotions hit you hard?
that is an autistic experience, particularly empathy for not for inanimate objects, and like more empathy for pets.
Mm, I do like some dogs.
Yeah,
All right. Well, let's talk about neurodivergence for a minute. In my view, there's only a few things that really shape how you see the world. Your gender can help you can alter how you see the world, your race, your education, obviously your Enneagram type, the century you were born, how healthy your body is. These can all really affect, how you experience the world. And neurodivergence seems to be one of those at a real high level. Like it has a very strong impact on how you see everything else. Yeah.
absolutely. It's not necessarily in the bad way, but you do have to recognize that it's not traditional, and there are some downsides, even more so than upsides, even though there are still upsides.
Mm,
A lot of people say that autism is a blessing, not a curse, and that it's just like a different ability. But no, it is a disability for a reason. You do have struggles that a neurotypical person would not have because you are autistic. And I can't speak for other people with different mental disabilities. For example, obsessive compulsive disorder or borderline personality disorder. There are but autism is one of the ones that kind of has the highest upsides, if that makes sense.
sure. Yeah.
At
Talk
least in
about
my
that.
eyes.
What's an upside?
I think when I see autism, I mostly think of the inventors and discoverers who are just making sure who just don't feel right in the world and so try and put action into making it feel right for them.
Mm.
For example, comfort items like coats or gloves to stop you from interacting with things you don't want to. I'm positive, for example, like dishwashing gloves were invented by an autistic person. That feels like or like switching to different fabrics such as polyester.
Hmm.
It is this sensitivity that is very important to autistic people, and that also means that they tend to be gravitated towards the sciences because those very much are a set of rules to produce some outcome.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Do you associate neurodivergence with rules?
I honestly I do. Or autism specifically. Neurodivergence is a blanket term for all mental disorders
That's
or mental differences.
that's
It's
important.
necessarily autism, and I don't think it. I think it's important to not conflate the two.
Yeah. No, that's incredibly important when it comes to experiencing the world with autism. How would you phrase that? That's a is it,
Experiencing it as an autistic person, I think it is important to say like the person the person is this quality, not has this quality, because it's not really something I can separate from myself, unlike something like ADHD, which I also have.
perfect. And that's see, I said it and I was like, I got the language wrong there.
It's all good. What matters more is that you care about the concepts, not the specific words you say it with.
Mm. You want to talk about autistic folks coming to the world and how rules overlap there?
Yeah, autistic people can be very rules oriented, but it is very much in a sense of an autistic person will not understand the rules at first or why they exist. And so they will not listen to it because they don't know what the rules are for. But once they understand the rules, they will be very protective of the rules and say that everyone should be doing it exactly this way because they understand why the rules are in place.
Mm. The is that I assume that that's part of your mental makeup. That what is it? What I hear is control at some level, being able to engage relational world at some level? What do you hear there?
I think it's partially relational, but I think it's mostly that the autistic people experience the world as like piecewise, I guess.
Mm, like wanting peace?
No, PIEC.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Like this is how this thing is and this is how this other thing is in a very categorical sense.
Yeah. You brought up inventors a while back. If somebody were to name, autistic folks that we probably all know, Einstein's always who comes to my mind first. I mean, physics by its nature is about rules and how reality functions and understanding yourself in relation to everything else through that kind of way of being in the world.
Yep, and mathematics more so because that's basically a part of okay, we have these rules. How far can we push them to discover new things?
Yeah. I heard Beethoven was also autistic, but music itself has that quality as well. And there's a lot of fantastic musicians who are autistic. Yeah.
Yes. There is that similar kind of organization and rhythm, and part of it is breaking the rules at some level, but part of it is using the rules to create something, and that can be very deeply satisfying for an autistic person.
Yeah.
I say can all the time because not all autistic people are the same. Just because I think this is how I personally am doesn't mean that it's the case for every single person who has autism ever.
Yeah. A lot of diversity there.
Yeah.
Big picture though, like if you were trying to explain to somebody who's unfamiliar with what it's like to be autistic, like what are some of the things that come to mind?
I think autism is a very inner focused thing. It's not that the term literally translate autos literally translate to self, so selfism. It's not selfishness necessarily, but it's like an internal focus, being just in your own time and space, as I think another language translates it as.
Uh, yeah, of course, yeah.
It isn't that other people don't exist, but you can get so focused on one specific thing that everything else just fades into the background, including in extreme examples, your own needs like need to eat or sleep, just because you're focused on a problem.
Mhm. That's really helpful because one of the experiences I assume for many autistic folks is the feeling I need to shut down for a moment.
It isn't a conscious decision. It when an autistic person shuts down or melts down is because everything else is overstimulating. It's too much coming in at once.
Mhm.
And that makes your own feelings come in too much at once. And that can be just very overwhelming.
I think I've mentioned this a handful of times, but it's like autism is a syndrome, which that's what that's about. Yeah, it's like 20 roads are leading towards the center, and it can get overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think there is a correlation between higher brain mass and more neural pathways, mean the parts of the brain, more parts of the brain connect to each other.
Yeah.
So having that fire on all cylinders can be just a lot.
Mm. Bing. Any last things on that come to mind in terms of what it feels like to be an autistic person for those who don't know?
I guess my experience isn't going to be the same as anyone else's. If you know someone else who is autistic, just like be respectful, but also ask them what that means, that means for them, because what I say it means for me may not be the same,
Yeah.
even though some symptoms may be correlated.
That's great advice. So there are a handful of folks who will probably click on this who aren't autistic, but are parents. And you and I both know folks who have autistic kids, and they're having to understand the vocabulary and the experience of the child who they love in real time, and growing with the child as they figure this out for themselves and what it will all mean.
Yeah.
What can be said to the parents?
First of all, vaccines do not cause autism. Like, I feel like I need to establish that right away. They just don't. It is a genetic. It is genetic in and before birth factors that lead to it.
Are you saying that vaccines can't affect your DNA, Augie?
I am saying that vaccines cannot affect your DNA. That is not what they do.
It's genetic, so it's very foundational, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also the case. Here's your eightness. You're going to be protective
Yeah.
for those who may get hurt by bad thinking about autism, yeah.
Absolutely. And the way to treat that is with just being informed. I think the most important thing I can say to parents with autism, other than that, is you are going to have your own expectations of how your kid is in the world that they are not going to follow. That's all right. They are going to find their own happiness, and it's not fair to them to force your own idea of happiness onto them.
So to be bold, sometimes don't know if you are happy because, as you said earlier, a lot of your time is spent kind of in retreat into a digital world.
Yeah. And
You
that's a place I find personal comfort in, but I understand that that's not something that a neurotypical person would see as being like functioning and out in the world. But it's engaging to me in the ways that I care about.
I think that's helpful. Any other things that strike you as neurotypical people will generally say this is what happiness is for the autistic folks in their life, and yet that's not a good message, as it were?
Yeah. Especially like this is something I'm struggling with right now, jobs. Being employed is a fantastic thing, and it is important to be able to earn a wage, but don't expect an autistic person to do it in the way that you're expecting. A lot of those standard 9 to 5 jobs can feel very controlling and overwhelming to an autistic person. And that is something that they will tend to want to avoid and find something else to do instead.
Something else matters there, though, yeah?
Yes, it is important that they find something to engage in. If they don't, they're going to be miserable.
I think that's helpful, though. Bang, last words on autism and neurodivergence in your experience?
I guess just don't coddle autistic people. It's we're not immature most of the time. We understand things. You don't have to baby us or feel bad for us because we have this disorder. We are just vibing.
We just vibing.
We are literally just here.
Uh, have any interest in talking about gender and sexuality?
I do think there is a higher correlation between being trans and especially non-binary for autistic people. I contribute that to two factors. The first is that an autistic person sees that they are autistic, understands that they don't fit into what is expected socially from them, and then tries to ask what else may be, either
Mm,
before or after they're
yeah.
diagnosed. And the other is that gender is a lot of perceived social roles that an autistic person may either not like or not vibe with or just not understand and thus want to distance themselves from.
That's a good word. It's likewise the case in my circles, at least. A lot of the folks who experiment or have self discoveries about gender, in my experience, are often fours or eights who have a high elevation of authenticity, and eights in particular don't want to be controlled in
Yes.
a variety of ways. Do you have thoughts?
Eights and fours look inwards for two separate reasons. I think eights coming to the conclusion that they are different is a surprisingly common one. It's not less likely for the other types to be trans or non-binary. I don't think there's a correlation there, but I do think eights and fours are probably the first two types to put that out into the world and not care as much if there's resistance.
Mhm. My, uh, journey with you from real small is twofold on these fronts because I experienced you learning that you're autistic and learning that you were non-binary, and I had to adjust to both those. That wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, you don't know you're going to raise a trans kid or a non-binary kid or a neurodivergent kid. That's just not or a disabled kid in general. Those are things you should be prepared for if they happen, but they're not things you expect.
Have I'd be real curious what your experience of this has been because the thing about being non-binary is you have to discover that and then communicate it to others, and then some of us aren't familiar with what that would mean for you, who we deeply care for, and I mean, the easiest thing up front was just, here's the language that needs to be assumed, regarding pronouns and the rest. But there's more to it than that, yeah.
It is mostly personal, and I think like pronouns are the least exciting part about being trans or non-binary. It just they are just words you use in the same way that you would use a name.
Mhm.
They mostly do not matter.
What's the thing that does matter?
I think it is mostly the self-presentation, the self-expression side of things. Being able to, for example, grow my hair out into a ponytail has been very affirming for me because that's what I personally want to look like in the world. And for someone who, for example, who wants to take HRT or get top surgery, those can be very those can be very enabling in a good way. Those can be very self-expressive. I'm going to say that.
The thing that was most important to me on this journey was actually has a lot of overlap with Enneagram, and that is you have a mind and experience of yourself mentally, and you have a body and an experience of yourself physically. You have physical body parts, and those are clear and distinct from your mental self-understanding. For many people, body parts and mental self-understanding go together, and they almost it's like, why wouldn't they go together? You have grown up thinking these things went together forever, so of course they go together. Yet for some, mental self-understanding and body parts do not align, and that is a mental experience that some people are having that needs to be named, and then there, as was said, then you can make choices about that, of how you wanna relate to your mind, how you wanna relate to your body. That's how I've understood it. Is there anything to plus there? Is there a better way to say that
I
or
Yeah,
clarify?
it's you're discovering all this for yourself, and that is just something you have to learn on your own. No one else is going to explain it for you. Everyone just assumes that they're cisgender and straight until proven otherwise.
Mhm.
When you do realize that being male is not for me, for example, it starts to make you think like, okay, it's a bit arbitrary. Like the Scots wear kilts, and that's something we would call feminine as skirts.
Mhm.
India has pink as a very male associated color, and it was that way before World War II anyway.
Mhm.
And those are and pink is a color we associate with girls now. It does feel very arbitrary, but people still perceive you as a certain way based on how you present yourself in the world.
Mhm.
And for someone who is trans and non-binary, it may be obvious that you are representing yourself in that sort of way, but for a cisgender person, it may be less so.
To be a little bit more clear about the ideas, there's a difference between being a biological male and the categories of masculinity and being a man in our culture. One is mental, they'll do it, but it's not prescriptive.
It's mental, but it's mostly social, I would say. It is,
There you go.
we have these two sexes, and then some people who are kind of in the blurry lines in between because shit is weird.
Mhm.
And we want to divide them socially so we know who has what without having to just be to just have ourselves exposed like that.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, the reason why culture may prefer just 2 genders is just it's an assumption that this has practicality or utility, but it certainly doesn't need to be that way, and it's certainly the case that in making that binary, you can do damage.
Absolutely. The rules and expectations we place on people because they have a specific birth sex or present as a certain gender. I think freedom is the ability to make either choice and not be punished for it. Freedom is the ability to say you can do either of these things and we will not care, but you get to decide that for yourself. For example, you have the freedom to break your leg right now. No one is going to stop you from doing that, but it is a bad thing to do. And there are more neutral things, like you have the freedom to get tattooed. You have the freedom to get a bad tattoo or a good tattoo. And that is a permanent modification to your body that is pretty difficult to remove. And that's not something that everyone wants, but some people do, and they should have the right to say for themselves what that thing is. I don't see why gender should be any different.
And it's worth noting that at the least, allowing when somebody makes choices about their gender, it's not very clear that it's doing damage. In fact, it may actually be doing the opposite. This may be a very invigorating, humanizing, ego elevating experience. Yeah.
Being a woman is a choice that some people make. Not all people. Some people just assume they're women and stick with that and don't question it ever. Or some people are forced to not transition for whatever reason. But some people choose to be women. That can be trans people who decide that woman is a category that best fits them. Or it can be cis people who really like being women and want to be womanly in the way that they see best.
Mm-hmm.
It can be, for trans people, this experience is obviously a lot more liberating because they know that they go in deciding it. But it can also be liberating for cis people in the exact same way. I should have said this before. For cis, I mean someone who kept their assigned gender at birth.
It's perfect. And there seems to be quite a bit of movement at times. Recently, it appears there's a lot of folks who are opting for what seem aggressive facial reconstructions and plastic surgeries as an expression of their femininity.
Yeah.
Do you know how to wrestle with that? Like, how would you wrestle with that?
You have the ability to break your leg.
Yeah,
No
and
one is stopping you from breaking your leg.
and I think that's right. And it would be similar across the board. That freedom, self-expression, aligning one's body with one's sense of self.
For some people, that can be seen as like damage, and I know particularly for vaginoplasty, the process of giving someone a vagina,
Mhm,
that process, or phalloplasty, the process of giving someone a penis, that can be very experimental and a bit newer and not as well practiced, and therefore either risky or not desirable for someone who is trans.
mhm.
But for people who do want to go through with that, it's their decision. You read the warning label and you are deciding to take the product anyway.
Mhm.
And for most people, they have already questioned this before you ask them. They do not need another person telling them that what they're doing is irreversible.
Right.
And I think the same respect should be given to Myers, honestly. I do think Myers should be allowed to start hormone replacement therapy, generally. Because if you are at an age where you have, at any age, gender is one of the first things that you understand. If you understand that you are not part of it, and like puberty blockers are the middle ground,
Mhm,
saying, okay, well, at the very least, let's make it so that you don't have testosterone or estrogen in your body before transitioning to putting more of the one you want in your body.
mhm.
But most people generally know. Like, you know that you're male. You are not female. And that has more to do than just which body parts you have.
That was the best argument that you laid out for me. I think coming to the topic, and I know nothing about this even, but my assumption would be that testosterone and estrogen will affect how your brain develops, and so maybe wise to hold off till a certain point. What your counter was, and I would love to see this statistically, because that I think that would make a lot of be very, very helpful, is to say something to the effect of, "You know what your gender is when you're 10 or when you're 13, and that doesn't change."
It doesn't generally change. There are people who like to be fluid with either their gender or expression, but it's generally static.
So, I think that would matter if you were said. I mean, now we're talking ethics, so, going down those roads, I think that would matter. The I have a question about your ponytail. If it were the case that all men in America had ponytails, would that change your desire to have a ponytail if all males, biological males, in general chose ponytails?
I'm not certain actually. This is just how I like to experience. This is just how I like to wear my hair myself. And there are men who do have ponytails outside of me. It's a bit rare, but it does happen.
Mhm.
But I actually don't know.
Think
It's a bit of a loaded question. It's like saying like, if all if all men had breasts, would you want breasts? I wouldn't know because I just I just wouldn't have experienced my own perception of gender under those terms.
that's interesting. Well, you'll know that I had a ponytail for a handful of years.
I think so. I do remember you saying that your hair was very curly, so you didn't have it long for long.
All through college, I had a ponytail cut off in the middle and grown back. However, I think that's interesting in terms of self-understanding and gender. When thinking about yourself, you may say, "I'm selecting this space as an expression of my self-understanding," and that space may be relative.
Yeah. And when people argue against that, I all I'm hearing is don't use that box of hair dye. It will turn your hair purple. And I'm just like, that's the point. I'm not going to regret this because it is a decision I am actively making and know the consequences of.
You've thrown out two words that I probably should circle back to, trans and non-binary.
Yeah.
How would you define those?
Trans, as a blanket term, just means any way to express yourself that does not align with your gender assigned at birth. And non-binary would be gender that is not strictly male or female. It can be closer to one of those two ends, but it's not at one of them.
And that's a mental experience.
That is a very mental experience, or like a very social experience, in the sense of this is the way I want to be perceived by others.
Right. Are you okay being a biological male and non-binary? Is that a comfortable space to live in?
I ideally my sex assigned at birth would not matter.
Sure.
But if I was assigned female at birth, I do not know if I was assigned female at birth, if my body was the same, if I had like a similar experience growing up, I do not think my expression would change that much. I would want to have at the very least a similar body to the kind I have now, or at the very least be comfortable with a body that I do have right now.
Yeah. Imagine that's a helpful idea of feeling comfortable with your body because I bet most people understand what that means.
Yes, it isn't. I know the term trapped in the wrong body is a common term that goes around to describe the trans experience. And that's somewhat true. But other times it can just be like, okay, this just needs tweaking, then we're good to go. Like, you could be like, for example, cis people would do this too. They could be like, I want to be more muscular, so they work out more, for example.
I don't know anybody like that, but if
Of
I
course you
did,
don't. But, or I want to be taller, so I'm going to wear inserts in my shoes that help me look taller to other
yeah,
people. That's a more common one. Or I'm going to wear my hair a certain way, or I'm going to shave because I don't like having facial hair. Those are things that trans or non-binary people can do, but those are ways that cis people experience and change their own perception in a similar social way.
I'm thinking of this all rhetorically as like this is a great argument. What's the difference between wanting to be more muscular and
Wanting to swap your gender.
to stray away from gender stereotypes intentionally because of where you wish to mentally fit?
And people have a perception of you for many reasons. That could be like your name, your sex, your gender expression,
Mhm.
how well you fit into that gender expression, your posture towards the world, your personality, your race, your hair color, your eye color. All these things just consciously or subconsciously change the way other people see you. And I think, like, generally, if you want to change a lot of those things, then you should be allowed to do so. it's a bit weird because of when it comes to race, because that's more cultural, but and obviously that's still like controversial for a lot of reasons. But I don't know, people should feel comfortable in the body that they have, is my opinion.
It seems like a culture with our heritage of elevating justice and liberty should easily embrace and celebrate both. Justice is about fairness for all. Liberty is about freedom for all. Those seem to come together real cleanly here in terms of like the best elements of our culture's past.
Absolutely. And I think that is a thing that should apply to the transgender experience or the LGBTQ experience in general. I am also bisexual, and a lot of the arguments that people use to attack gay people also attack trans people. But there's this idea of there's this whole idea of, I say, conservatism in, or like traditionalism.
Mhm,
This idea that things should be the way they were in the past.
mhm.
This isn't something that should be true for everything that someone experiences, but this is, a lot of people have these ideas, are these are the ways that men and women should be in the world,
Yeah.
or the way people should be in the world just in general, not necessarily based on gender, but like people should act this way, for example, like when in a job or when at a fancy restaurant. That this social pressure to conform to the ways that you should be in the world, what happens when you don't like that? Or what happens when that is genuinely discomforting to you, or worse, harmful?
Yeah.
What happens when someone what happens when people say that women shouldn't vote, or that based on their sex, because that's the way they've always been, and this is just the quote unquote natural order of things, when it's a lot more social and constructed than they expect them to be.
What I hear and what I think is most important in these spaces is communication, that you hear the stories articulated well by those who can say, "Here's my inner experience, why I'm making the choices I am." In particular, this isn't harming anybody, and this is actually making, on the opposite front, a better culture, a more diverse culture, a more understanding culture, a more empathetic culture. These are all real high values, and
Absolutely. I think I do not see a problem in saying I do not want to do this. I have a problem when someone says I do not want you to do this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
This um this American ideal of laissez-faire, the idea of live and let live, has been kind of abandoned recently. There's a lot of pressure from others to be a certain way, and that's just antithetical to what I think makes America great.
I don't know that conformity has really ever been an American value that's been highly advantageous for us.
It shouldn't be, but like the message that people say and the way they sell it to you can be different.
Yeah. And one more question.
Yep.
Oh, talk about that's a good kind of overlap of all the things. Your eightness, autism, and a preference for rules, and yet what is being said here, it feels like the rules here are should be broken, and you have understood, I understand the rules, or I understand the past, what, norms that have been, quote, unquote, like, established, but I'm going to break those, and this is why.
Yeah. It's not that just I understand the rules, it's I understand why the rules were made, either written down or social and intangible.
Mhm,
When when I speak of gender, it's not in a prescriptive term, it's a descriptive term. Men generally are like this, women generally are like this.
mhm,
And people who say I fit into the category of male or female decide what it means for them, even if they don't consciously choose to make that decision.
mhm.
And people can do very, very bad things by saying, like, this is what it means to be a male, or this is what it means to be a female. It isn't something that everyone decides ever. And I think saying that one of those is inherently bad is equally as harmful. But I also do acknowledge that there are unhealthy ways to be both of those things,
To be
to be male or female, or
oh,
non-binary even. You can be being part of a minority does not preclude you from being an asshole.
you can be just to say that you can be a bad man as a quote unquote man.
Yes, there are ways to, for example, be toxically masculine. There are ways to take the values that are prescribed on especially American men and use them to hurt other people.
As opposed to, I feel like the word toxic masculinity can sabotage the point being made. What are the vices that you would associate with that posture?
Primarily this idea of dominance and control. That's something I experience as innate a lot, but when people are toxically masculine, it's not they they're dominant and controlling in disrespect to other people. And
Mm,
that's where I see the problem. When for example you see women as objects to earn the affection of rather than as individual people who have their own feelings and desires, and just like you, and some of those desires can be to submit, but they don't necessarily have to be, and assuming that has to be the case is disrespectful and counterproductive.
well said.
I guess just my lesson at the end of the day for just all of this is people are not defined by the categories that they fit into. People people can be the way that you expect them and can fit into the stereotypes, but they're really just their own person, and you're going to have to figure them out. And maybe they're bad, but they have reasons that they're bad that are honestly probably worth figuring out and trying to help them with.
That's a helpful last word. I would love to push into that a bit. Like the categories can be helpful when getting from here to there. Like knowing that I have an autistic child can be helpful for me to navigate the world, or knowing that I have a non-binary child can be helpful in terms of understanding all the things. But
If I have a broken leg, those parts do not matter. If
it's
I
true.
if I am getting into a fight with a stranger on the street, those things do not matter.
I was more going to say it feels like they are ladders to climb up so that I can push them away. That's a
Yeah,
Wittgenstein image, but it's that I understand it so that
it does not have to matter to me.
it doesn't have to matter. Because the person that I really care about isn't autistic person X. The person that I really care about is Augie Cook. This person matters to me in a very personal, very intimate and specific way. It's this person who I love, and not this category.
And those labels can be helpful for defining what, or like for saying what parts of them you can expect or what to look out for or how they want to be in the world. But it's not like, but saying that all people who fit into that category are like that is counterproductive. And saying that like, oh, I heard that autistic people are X, therefore this person who has an autistic must also be X.
Mhm.
That's equally unhelpful. And so is saying like, oh, this person is autistic, therefore all autistic people might be like this.
Mhm.
Just it's hard to just say people are their own person sometimes. It is really easy to go into labels for stuff
Yeah.
and stereotypes, but man, there's more beneath the surface.
It's just and that, I mean, it brings us full circle to just Enneagram and all the things. Like at the end of the day, you're you. You're not your type. You're not your number. You're not your neural pathways. At some level, there's actually something rich, deep, and specific that is beyond these categories.
Absolutely. And those are parts that affect me, but they're not me. They are things I have in a box that I keep with me. Or even better, just like parts of my body that impact the way that I am in the world.
It's a good word. That's what I got. Hey, thank you for sharing my birthday with me. Cheers to my water and your 0
Okay, never
Cherry
mind.
cola.
There was a tiny bit of cherry cola in there. Thank you.
All right, friends. We'll see you next time.
See ya.